steht am Buch, redt und tra, a ganze Nacht. Bei men zu nehmen, e nicht verschämen, bei men zu nehmen, e nicht
Olá,
verschämen.
bem-vindos ao último episódio da primeira temporada dos Encontros Espirituais. Eu sou Tiago Brito Pereira, tarólogo e terapeuta espiritual, e neste podcast vamos abordar temas contemporâneos através de uma perspectiva espiritual, porém não religiosa nem dogmática, mas antes pragmática e realista, com os pés bem assentes na terra. Neste espaço semanal teremos uma reflexão pessoal e uma conversa aberta com convidados, onde aprenderemos juntos como ultrapassar os desafios e aproveitar as oportunidades que o universo nos apresenta. Acredito que este episódio vos vai ajudar muito, pois vamos falar de relacionamentos amorosos e da sua ligação com a espiritualidade. É um episódio que será útil tanto a quem está num relacionamento como a quem está só e à procura de um relacionamento amoroso. Vou entrevistar na segunda parte uma pessoa muito especial, a minha esposa, Segura Pereira, psicoterapeuta com um mestrado em Ciências da Psicologia, onde vamos falar juntos de como ter sucesso na vida amorosa, melhorar as relações existentes ou encontrar a tal relação com a pessoa chamada ideal. Neste episódio do podcast não vamos falar de o amor romântico que nos é mostrado nos filmes e nos contos de fadas. Isso não existe. Todos sabemos e sabemos que isso não existe na realidade, mas queremos acreditar. É um pouco como o Pai Natal. Todos sabemos que não existe e se tiverem crianças, existe, estou a brincar, mas na realidade todos sabemos que não existe, mas queremos acreditar que sim, não é? O amor não é uma energia implacável, ao contrário do que as pessoas pensam. O amor não é algo a que nós não conseguimos resistir. Muitas pessoas estão em relações tóxicas, relações muito más, das quais não conseguem sair e dizem muitas vezes: esta relação não é boa, esta pessoa não é boa, mas eu amo. Espiritualmente, isso é errado e não existe. Não é uma corrente espiritual. O amor é, tal como todas as energias que me definem como pessoa, uma escolha. Eu escolho amar, como posso escolher deixar de amar. O amor é um processo ativo, consciente, que exige da minha parte clareza, presença e também responsabilidade pelas minhas escolhas. Eu costumo dar este exemplo muitas vezes. Se o amor fosse uma coisa implacável, eu agora, sobre a qual eu não consigo controlar, eu agora ia ali à frutaria e apaixonava-me pela senhora que corta as melancias. Isso não faz sentido nenhum. Eu não posso, de repente, ser acometido de uma energia implacável e não poder viver sem aquela pessoa. Isso não seria amor. Isso seria doentio. E espiritualmente eu estaria a perder o meu livre-arbítrio. E isso não pode acontecer a nível espiritual, tendo consciência de que o livre-arbítrio é o nosso dom supremo. Não quer dizer, atenção, que não nos podemos apaixonar por uma pessoa porque a vimos num sítio qualquer e sentimos atração por essa pessoa, num acontecimento qualquer, num jantar, nos transportes públicos, onde quer que seja. Pode acontecer. E isso é normal e é assim que nós nos vamos apaixonando pelos outros. Porém, também é esta a forma que o universo tem de colocar as pessoas no nosso caminho e de colocar o amor na nossa vida como, uma vez mais, um ato de escolha. Porém, apaixonar-me por alguém começa de forma subtil. Há sinais, há gestos, há um crescimento, há um crescendo gradual em que a minha energia e a energia da outra pessoa se vão conectando e vão crescendo em conjunto. E quando eu digo que o amor é uma escolha, é isso mesmo que eu quero dizer, é que eu vejo aquela pessoa, sinto algo mais, sinto também a energia da pessoa e depois escolho alimentar esta relação com base nesses sinais que estou a receber. Eu estou a usar o meu livre-arbítrio para escolher amar alguém. E essa é uma decisão que eu tomo todos os dias, quando estou numa relação ou quando estou à procura de uma relação. Eu tenho de escolher amar alguém pelas razões certas, pelas razões que também me vão servir a mim. Portanto, eu tenho de me mostrar disponível também para amar a outra pessoa, ou seja, eu não posso amar alguém mas não querer abrir o meu interior, abrir a minha energia a essa pessoa. Portanto, é um processo recíproco, é um processo em que há uma troca, há uma sinergia entre os dois, em que eu dou à outra pessoa aquilo que outra pessoa necessita e recebo dela aquilo que eu necessito para que eu me sinta mais feliz e para me sentir bem ao lado dessa pessoa. Essa decisão e este processo requer trabalho interior. Ou seja, eu não consigo saber aquilo que eu quero se eu não tiver olhado para dentro. E isso é fundamentalmente um processo espiritual. Este trabalho interior é essencial, porque está numa relação por pena ou porque sentimos responsabilidade pela felicidade de outra pessoa, não é bom nem para nós, nem para os nossos parceiros. Muitas vezes estamos tão presos à relação, estamos acomodados, ou temos medo da mudança, ou sentimos inseguros quanto ao futuro, e vamos nos anulando cada vez mais, apenas porque achamos que se tomarmos a decisão de terminar a relação, não sabemos o que vai ser da outra pessoa, será que a pessoa vai ficar bem, se calhar a pessoa depois vai ficar mal, vai reagir mal, ou eu próprio não vou ficar bem, eu não sei o que vai ser de mim, e na realidade eu estou a anular-me e estou cada vez mais a afastar-me daquilo que é a verdadeira essência do amor. O amor alimenta-se de felicidade e de uma troca entre um e outro, ou entre várias pessoas, no caso do amor, por exemplo, familiar, do amor fraterno. Este trabalho interior passa sempre por eu fazer uma análise honesta da minha vida amorosa e ver como posso agir no sentido de a melhorar. Amar não é apenas um sentimento, é também uma ação, é estar disponível para aquela pessoa, é saber escutar e saber também transmitir, comunicar de forma honesta. Portanto, é eu reconhecer os meus próprios medos, os meus limites e os meus padrões, aquilo que eu sou. Os meus padrões são os meus comportamentos. Eu sou composto de diversos comportamentos e diversas atitudes, e isso é um padrão que pode ser positivo ou negativo, mas é um padrão. Portanto, eu tenho de reconhecer esses padrões e depois não ter necessariamente de os projetar no outro. Ou seja, quem eu sou como sou, mas o meu parceiro, ou a minha parceira, neste caso, não é igual a mim. Não tem de ser igual a mim. Ela tem é de me dar aquilo que eu preciso para eu me sentir feliz e para eu crescer. E eu tenho de saber o que ela precisa e dar-lhe aquilo que ela precisa para ela também ser feliz e poder crescer. Portanto, amar é, na realidade, um compromisso em que crescemos os dois. Este compromisso é como se fosse uma negociação. Na realidade, eu dou este exemplo muitas vezes, é uma negociação dos tempos antigos, dos tempos feudais. Antigamente, como sabeis, a troca era feita, a negociação era feita com coisas diferentes. Eu podia precisar de uma galinha e alguém podia precisar de batatas. E eu ia dar batatas se eu as tivesse e receber em troca uma galinha. Aquilo que eu preciso é diferente daquilo que eu tenho para dar, por vezes. Também no amor assim o é. Aquilo que eu valorizo numa relação amorosa e que eu preciso, neste caso que a minha esposa me dê, é diferente daquilo que ela precisa. Porém, ela tem para me dar aquilo que eu preciso e eu tenho para lhe dar aquilo que ela precisa. Podem ser coisas diferentes, mas estamos os dois a ter as nossas necessidades correspondidas. Portanto, este amor é uma troca à moda antiga, galinhas, batatas, outra pessoa precisa de laranjas, outra pessoa precisa de peixe e eu vou dando aquilo que eu tenho para dar e recebendo aquilo que eu tenho para receber, mas na realidade eu não posso passar fome, nem posso deixar outra pessoa a passar fome. Portanto, aquilo que eu dou e aquilo que eu recebo tem de ser suficiente. Aquilo que me permite estar bem numa relação amorosa é muito semelhante àquilo que desenvolvemos no nosso caminho espiritual. Em ambos os casos, temos de ter autoconhecimento, já falei sobre isso, temos de ter uma prática diária, uma relação amorosa é algo de prática diária e temos de nos entregar a algo maior que o nosso ego. O nosso ego é posto de parte porque a relação é mais importante do que aquilo que é o meu ego. A relação é mais importante porquê? Porque a relação, na realidade, faz-me crescer. Não é que a relação seja mais importante do que eu, mas o meu crescimento é mais importante que o meu ego. Então a relação alimenta o meu crescimento pessoal e coletivo, no caso familiar, no caso social, etc. Ora, do ponto de vista espiritual, quando nós meditamos, quando fazemos orações, quando fazemos introspeção, criamos um espaço interno. Nós basicamente tentamos silenciar o ruído e tentar ficar atentos àquilo que nós estamos a sentir, àquilo que nós estamos a precisar e quais são os nossos pontos fortes naquele momento e quais são os nossos pontos fracos. Numa relação amorosa saudável vai acontecer o mesmo. Eu vou ter de ter tempo para mim nessa relação, para me conhecer, para perceber aquilo que eu preciso e saber dar tempo e espaço também à pessoa que está comigo, e o vínculo entre nós só se irá fortalecer se isso acontecer. E há muitos estudos que demonstram esta ligação entre a espiritualidade e o sucesso nos relacionamentos. Por exemplo, um artigo publicado no Journal of Couple and Relationship Therapy, baseado numa amostra de mais de 5.000 casais, concluiu que a partilha de um sentido espiritual está associada a níveis mais elevados de intimidade e de bem-estar conjugal. No plano, do ponto de vista energético, também podemos olhar para os chakras como indicadores de equilíbrio na nossa relação amorosa. O chakra do coração, que rege o amor e as relações interpessoais, a empatia e a aceitação, está mais ativo, pulsa com mais força e está mais aberto se estivermos numa relação saudável. O chakra sacral, ligado à intimidade e à expressão emocional, e o chakra do terceiro olho, que nos ajuda a intuir, a tomar decisões e a compreender os demais, também fluem com mais intensidade e, vice-versa, se nós estivermos a sentir-nos com falta de empatia, se nos sentirmos desligados a nível emocional, sem nos conseguirmos relacionar com as outras pessoas, se nos sentirmos confusos, com muitas dúvidas constantes, podemos estar numa relação tóxica sem que nos apercebamos ou sem que queiramos reconhecer que estamos nessa relação. Por último, trabalhando a lei da atração, há pequenas práticas diárias que nos ajudam a manter a energia do amor viva. Por exemplo, reservar momentos de escuta diária, sem distrações, para entender aquilo que eu preciso e como eu me sinto nesse dia, expressar gratidão ao parceiro, saber elogiar a pessoa que está connosco diariamente. Um pequeno elogio faz maravilhas e pode ser feito de forma diária, sem custos, sem presentes extravagantes, sem nada despampanante. Basta um elogio: gosto do teu cabelo, gosto da tua camisola, qualquer coisa, a outra pessoa vai se sentir bem. E isso deve ser feito de forma diária. Também é importante na relação, trabalhando a lei da atração, é importante partilhar a nossa intenção para a relação e os objetivos de crescimento tanto pessoal como do casal. E é importante também partilhar os nossos receios para que eles possam ser trabalhados. O amor não se vai sustentar sozinho, portanto este processo tem de ser feito por ambos. Porém, tal como a espiritualidade, se for cultivado, ele vai crescer de forma infinita. Na segunda parte, vou conversar com a minha esposa Emma sobre como podemos fazer boas escolhas nos relacionamentos, como definir aquilo que realmente procuramos, como identificar sinais de toxicidade numa relação ou numa pessoa e, acima de tudo, como continuar a escolher amar. Para quem não sabe, a minha esposa é inglesa, a segunda parte da entrevista vai ser em inglês, mas podem ver no YouTube ativando as legendas em português. Até já e obrigado. Welcome to the second half of the Encontros Espirituais podcast. I have here with me my wife, Emma Segura Pereira, psychotherapist specialized, amongst other things, in relationships. Emma is a psychotherapist with a master's degree in psychological sciences from Brunel University, London, complemented by additional training in counseling and psychotherapy. She specializes in humanistic therapy, meaning her sessions are client-oriented, and she acts as a guide to help individuals learn how to make better decisions in their lives. Emma supports clients dealing with anxiety, depression, self-esteem issues, and relationship difficulties. Originally born in the UK, Emma has lived in 9 different countries, including Spain, where we met, and now resides in Portugal. Her international experience enables her to efficiently support foreign clients who face challenges adapting to life abroad as well. In addition to her therapy work, Emma is also an English teacher and a mentor. Her true passion lies in helping people, and she has worked with individuals of all ages and backgrounds from around the world. Emma is a strong woman whose intelligence, both emotional and academic, is something I truly admire. She has spent decades in her self-growth process, traveled the world, and is very passionate about helping others grow and achieve their results, whether as a teacher or as a psychotherapist. Not only do I love her for her beauty, obviously, I'm also very proud of her accomplishments and also very grateful for our marriage. Emma understands love relationships at a deep level, helps me every time I need her, and our relationship keeps growing healthily year after year for more than 8 years now. She's also guided and mentored lots of clients that felt lost in their love lives to take decisions and attract the right partner. Emma, thank you so much for this interview.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here with me on the last episode of the podcast.
That's right.
You are a woman of science.
Mm-hmm.
You are pragmatic. Do you consider yourself as a spiritual person as well?
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you for having me here
In our home.
In our home. Apologies to all your listeners that I'm doing this in English. I'm still on the course for learning Portuguese, but it's taken me a while.
They don't mind.
So yeah, I definitely consider myself a spiritual person. I'm not religious. I don't consider myself religious because I don't really affiliate with any one particular religion. But I think a little bit like yourself, my love, I appreciate different aspects of different religions. But spirituality for me, I think, it's like a sense of connectedness to the world, to the universe. I mean, even if I'm just sat in the garden, we have a lovely view outside, and I can see the trees and the animals, and that to me is this connectedness that I feel. And I think spirituality is just sort of an understanding of where you belong in the world and knowing that you're in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
So I'm quite a big traveller, as we both are, as you are as well. Yeah. And I think I always really feel that sense of spirituality when I travel to a place that I've never seen before. Just being able to admire it, either whether it's the Grand Canyon or a new city or something like that. That to me is what spirituality is, and I know that not everybody would agree with that necessarily, but I don't know. That's how I perceive it. That's how I feel it, I would say. So
yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
And traveling to different places that also makes you grow spiritually as well,
Right.
not just intellectually as a person, but spiritually, especially if you consider that you're next to people whose background is completely different than yours,
Right.
isn't it? And you actually see how people experience life, different rhythms, different perspectives, isn't it? That's an exercise. That's an exercise in spirituality as well.
Absolutely. I think on the one hand, when you travel, it makes you realize how big the world is and how small and effectively insignificant you are. Yet at the same time, one of the things that I've learned from my travels is how fundamentally every human being on the face of the earth is the same.
Yeah.
We all have the same desires, dreams, hopes, wishes, and whilst culturally other aspects are different, like food, music, clothes, we're all the same ultimately, and we're sort of connected in that respect.
Yeah.
When I remember I was traveling through Vietnam, and it's a completely different culture. One of the things I learned was that basically everyone everywhere is addicted to their phone, so that doesn't change wherever you go. So, but
nowadays,
yeah.
Talking about traveling, one of the many things I admire in you is the fact that you lived in several different countries. What was the most challenging one as a single woman? Because I know you lived in those countries mainly when you were single. What was the most challenging one?
That's a really good question. I have to say, funnily enough, it was actually where we met, which was Spain. And that's probably because that's where I lived for the longest amount of time as well. I lived in Spain for about a total of 13 years in different places. And I guess it was challenging because I was also going through a period of self-growth at the time. And culturally, perhaps I didn't click so well with some of the men there. So I would say, probably Spain was one of the most challenging until I met you, of course. So,
well, it's interesting. It's really interesting. Well, you started your career as a teacher. When we met, you were still just a teacher, and you've been a teacher for more than 20 years now. What made you change into psychology?
Well, I've been absolutely fascinated by psychology for many, many, many years, for my own personal reasons, which I'll go into a little bit more later on. But there is a huge crossover between teaching and psychology. To be a good teacher, it's more than just knowing your subject academically, which of course in my case is languages. You also have to know your students on a very, very personal and intimate level. So when I was a classroom teacher, because I'm trained to teach kids at high school from the age of 11 till 18 and adults as well. But when you're a high school teacher, as well as the academic side, you also have what we call the pastoral side, which is looking after kids from almost like the role of a parent as opposed to the role of a teacher. So this will be dealing with kids who are having behavioural issues at school, of which you have many, 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 you know. Kids who are having problems with their own families, with their friends. So you have to be able to connect with these students on a completely different level. So, you know, as a teacher, I would have to liaise with parents all the time. And then, you know, I have to say, once you meet the parents, you often know where the problem's coming from, you know. We had school psychologists who I used to be in communication with all the time. The kids themselves, talking to them, trying to dig deep, finding out if a kid was having a problem, you know, you would have to dig deep and find out. Like I can give you one example. I had a student once, he was about 11 at the time, and I really liked this little boy. He was very boisterous, and he was sort of known as a troublemaker in the school. When he was in my class, I don't know, he just seemed to behave. For me, he seemed to be okay, but I know that, you know, in other classes, he was acting up. And he was, not only was he my student for English, but he was also in my tutor group as well. So I called in his parents. And again, it was immediate. I knew exactly what was going on. Both his parents were high flyers. I believe his mum was a judge and his dad was a businessman of sorts. And as soon as I sat down at the table, they just went for each other. They were arguing. I think they were in the process of divorce. And it was... sorry, I'm kind of going off on a tangent a little bit, but it's okay. I think it's relevant. And I saw exactly where the problem was. And not surprisingly, a few years later, I heard that the poor kid had been expelled from the school for bullying, you know. And I think that, along with my own development, my own childhood issues that I've had to struggle to overcome for many years, is what really pushed me over into wanting to go more into psychology. So, yeah, and... as I said, there's a huge link between teaching and psychology, and many of the other people who did my master's degree in psychological sciences were also teachers as well, because you just kind of naturally go towards that way. Because
so the way you build a rapport with a student is not much different than the way you build a rapport with a client as a psychotherapist. Identical,
absolutely identical. You need the same kind of rapport, and you know that in psychotherapy, and I suppose in teaching as well, the rapport that you have with your client is the absolute number one factor in how successful psychotherapy is. Doesn't matter what different modality you choose. You know, there are different types of psychotherapy. You've got cognitive behavioral, you've got psychoanalysis, etc. The actual type of therapy that you choose, it influences, it has like a 1% influence on the success of the therapy. The connection with the therapist is the key. So, yeah.
Well, that's interesting. Would you say, though, to be, I've heard this before, I don't know how true this is. Would you say then to be, that most psychotherapists actually have to have had lots of psychotherapy themselves to develop this passion for therapy? Normally you have to have had it before.
Yeah, there is actually a term in psychotherapy called wounded healer. And many people that I've met who are wanting to be or who are psychotherapists fall into this category. Somebody who has experienced trauma themselves, whatever it might be, or experienced difficult upbringing, who have dealt with it themselves. You know, you'll find a lot of addiction specialists are former addicts themselves because you know where the other person's coming from.
Who knows the struggle better.
Right, exactly. So absolutely. I don't think it's 100% essential maybe, but I think you'll probably find that the majority of psychotherapists have a story themselves, as I do.
And what kind of areas inside the psychotherapy is huge. On the first season of the podcast, I interviewed, I think, 3 different psychotherapists. All different areas. What kind of areas do you specialize in most?
Well, as you mentioned earlier, I do what's called humanistic psychotherapy, which is this idea that as humans, we're all geared towards self-improvement, that with the right kind of environment, we'll all struggle and strive to make life better. And humanistic therapy means that the client is the one who has all the answers, and the therapist is the guide that pushes them towards finding those answers. And different areas might be, like we mentioned, anxiety, depression, which go hand in hand, self-esteem issues, which are usually, again, connected to things like childhood trauma, helping people who have relocated from abroad, for instance, can be tricky to settle into a new country. And that's something I also have a lot of experience in as well. So, and various other issues, stress as well, which they all tend to go hand in hand, really.
And what are the most common problems people face in relationships? Now going in more into the relationship.
Of course, I help people with relationships as well, which is what we're talking about here. So the most common problems are, it's interesting this, because looking at our own marriage, we have our own issues as well, but it's different. So I think some of the big problems to begin with, the first one that comes to my mind is communication, or a lack of communication. I think this would make up almost like 80% of the problems in most relationships. And when we're talking about relationships, of course, now we're talking about romantic relationships more so than anything else, right? So I think communication issues are big ones. We don't learn how to communicate in relationships. In fact, we don't learn how to communicate at all.
At all, yeah.
We think that communication is speaking, and it's not. Communication, a huge part of communication is listening to understand. So this is something that I will often try to guide my clients in, how to listen to understand as opposed to listening to answer. Most times when somebody's listening, they're listening just to answer. They're not even listening to what you're saying. Yeah. They know what they want to say, and they just want you to finish as fast as possible so they can say what they have to say.
That's true.
So by learning how to listen to what your partner really has to say, that's going to overcome that problem. So communication issues, a second big one, and I think these are connected, unmet needs. Yeah. In a relationship, we all have needs. Your needs are different to my needs. Sometimes they're the same, but oftentimes they're different.
But they don't have to be the same.
They don't have to be the same. So unmet needs in a relationship is going to be a killer. Yeah. And again, this links to communication, this ability to ask your partner what they need and being able to express what you need as well. Yeah. So I would put that one down as the second one. Financial issues. Big one. Yeah. Big financial issues in that, it could be that one person is more controlling with money than the other. Or it could be that one person spends too much. Again, this is another issue that people have to sit down and communicate in. Intimacy issues, sexual issues as well. Another really big one. Yeah. Yep, absolutely.
And it's often a taboo as well, isn't it, that one?
Absolutely. Big taboo subject, but something that needs to be brought up. Again, all of these connected to that first topic that we mentioned of communication, in that if you're not expressing what you need sexually, then that's going to be a problem, and it's going to build resentment within the relationship as well. So I would say these are some of the most common ones. Would you add any to that, my love, that you can think of?
I think from experience, you mentioned the most important or the most relevant ones, the most common ones. I would just add here that it's mainly, from my experience, mainly either by having too much or not enough, especially when one behavior is exaggerated and overtakes all the other behaviors, whether it's spending, whether it's jealousy, whether it's depression, whether it's drinking and an addiction of some kind. When one behavior kind of trumps everything else, and it's very common as well, the lack of balance. It's like in my experience, spiritually, like a recipe. When you're making a recipe for a cake, you need to add ingredients at different stages and at different quantities. But if you add too much of one thing, you ruin the recipe. And
absolutely.
Sometimes that's my experience, and that's what we do as well. We try to balance our relationship with a bit of everything in the right time, in the right place. And that's the key. I think that's it, honestly. But from your experience as well, are there specific problems in relationships that affect more women than men?
It's interesting, this actually. I've been seeing a lot of research on this recently. There are different studies that show that on the one hand, married people are happier and live longer than unmarried people, although other studies show that that's only true for men and not for women.
Really?
Yes, very recently I saw a study that shows that it's I can't remember the exact figures. I'd have to look it up, but something like now 80% of women are going to stay single and not get married, because apparently marriage works better for men than it does for women. The theory behind this is to do with the burden that's placed on a lot of women when they do get married. Now, we were talking about balance. That's very important. But in a lot of relationships, what happens is in marriage, a lot of it falls onto the woman, domestic tasks, household chores. I mean, in our marriage, it's not an issue whatsoever. I think we have a really good balance of cleaning the house and doing different things, as you know. Yeah, raising kids often falls onto the woman's, into the woman's lap. And then nowadays, women are also expected to still bring home the bacon, and still go out and make money.
And sometimes more than the men.
And sometimes more than the men. So unfortunately, this concept of women having it all, I don't know how realistic that actually is within a marriage. So I think those can be the problems that affect women more so than men. I guess. And from an emotional perspective, I'm not sure.
Yeah. You were also talking about intimacy as well.
Absolutely.
Do you think as well there are specific intimacy problems that affect more women than men?
I would say, this is quite interesting because this is something that's happening to me now in this stage of life, which is, of course, menopause and perimenopause for women. The perimenopause, of course, is the 5-10 so years before you hit menopause. And this is a period of huge transition for women. Our hormones are changing, estrogen levels are dropping, and one of the huge areas that it impacts is on sex drives. Yeah. And this can really affect women and of course their partner as well.
Yeah.
They have a physical change in their bodies, all kinds of different things are going on, emotional changes as well. Again, anxiety levels go up, stress levels go up.
Mood swings.
Exactly. So I would say that's one of the biggest ones, perhaps, that from a physiological point of view, can really affect women. And again, it can go on for a long period of time. This is not something that rectifies itself after just 6 months. This can go on for years and years and years. But good news, apparently, once you go past menopause, which I don't know as of yet, apparently this does actually get better. But you might be waiting 10 or 15 years for that to happen. So.
Yeah, that's complicated. It's hence the importance of communication
again,
as well.
and that's the key, isn't it? Absolutely, that's it. So,
and do you think, or to what extent does being spiritual help, or even may hinder someone in their love life?
So that's a good question. I think it's about balance here, and again. When we're talking about spirituality, are we talking also about religion here? Would you say, my love, or just general spirituality, like what we mentioned earlier?
I would say both.
Both, yeah. Well, I mean, again, studies have shown that people who have the same faith, so if two people are of the same religious background, that can actually help improve marriages. I think the key here is empathy. I think spiritual people, if you're spiritual, if you're genuinely spiritual, I'm not talking about, church going to church every Sunday, but then doing things you shouldn't be doing. If you're genuinely spiritual, you do tend to have a more empathetic side, and empathy is everything in relationships. Empathy, is this understanding of why another person feels the way they feel, what's going on with them, and it takes you out of yourself, and it enables you to understand things from another person's point of view. So I would say that's the connection there between spirituality and relationships, is having this empathy, this compassion for others as well. Yeah. Because I'm sure, you know, lots of your listeners have had relationships that have been very one-sided with, and I'm going to put this in inverted commas now, a narcissist, because this is a term that's thrown around a lot nowadays, but somebody with lots of narcissistic tendencies, that's very self-centered, very selfish. If you're the opposite of that, that relationship will just never work. Yeah. You just can't, because it's so one-sided. Yeah.
It's very unbalanced.
Yeah, absolutely. But then from the perspective of hindering a relationship, I guess it would be if one person has very strong faith, the other person does not. Again, these are incompatible values. And to have a successful relationship, values need to match without a doubt. So that's going to be tricky if one person perhaps is too focused on their religion and that overshadows everything else. That could also be a hindrance too. So, yeah.
And talking on a different note, we hear a lot, and it's becoming more and more common to hear this term red flags. Be careful with the red flags. Be aware of the red flags. What are red flags, and how should people be aware of them, especially whilst they're dating, but also in a relationship?
Okay, so a red flag, it's a term, basically. It's a warning sign. It's like a little bell going off in your head that warns you to the fact that a relationship probably is not going to work. The problem with red flags is that we just don't listen to them, do we? We just don't. We're all guilty of it. We don't listen to them because we're in that, especially when we're dating and we meet somebody and they tick a few boxes and we think, oh, this person could be great for me. And we tend to overlook red flags. Now, I would break red flags down into ones which are kind of drop dead deal breakers for everybody. That is substance abuse. If you're dating someone and on the first date they get rip-roaringly drunk, probably not a great sign. You know, it's a sign to run the other way. If they are verbally, emotionally, physically abusive, although these don't tend to come out straight away. These tend to come out with more time. But even if you're in a relationship with somebody who is abusive in any way, shape or form, this is, as a psychotherapist, this is probably one of the only times I would recommend a client to leave their partner. If the person is abusive in any way, shape or form. For all of the things, I think things can be worked on, but for this, absolutely not. But then other red flags basically are about your values. So when you're dating, it's very important to know what your values are. We tend to approach dating, I think, from a very superficial perspective. We say, you know, I want somebody who's tall, somebody who's got blonde hair, and somebody who likes these types of movies. And this is all rubbish, I have to say. I mean, okay, we want somebody that we're attracted to.
There has to be a physical attraction.
Absolutely. For example, when I was dating, when I was younger, I mean, I'm a big movie buff. As you know, I love my movies. But we actually have zero similar taste in movies at all. And I always used to think that, I've got to meet somebody who has the same taste in movies as me. And turns out it's really not that important. So your red flags are things that ring bells in your head that make you think, their behavior does not align with my values. To give you a good example for myself, when I was dating, one of the things that I learned was that I appreciate a person who shows interest in me. And I went on many, many dates where I just sat there nodding my head, going, yep, when the other person spoke constantly, incessantly about themselves. And then if it ever got to a stage where the person, you know, if I invited the person back to my apartment for dinner or whatever, I was always on the lookout to see if people would take interest in the things that I have around my house, like my books and all my travel memorabilia, etc. And nobody ever did until you. And that for me was a green flag, which of course is the opposite of a red flag. It was a really great sign that you showed interest in me as a person, as opposed to just pushing on me what you want, you know. So
who am I?
That's it.
Or who I am.
That's it. Yeah. And then other red flags, you have to think about what it is that you want. I mean, something as simple as, is this person a smoker? If you're not a smoker, if you do not like smoking, that's a red flag. You know, that's not going to change. Yeah. Selfishness. Look at how the person behaves towards others, towards waiters, towards people in the public. Do they treat them with respect? And a big one that I would say is when a person's words and actions do not match, that is a huge red flag. Huge. A person can say all the right things. They can sweet talk you, they can charm you, but if their actions don't match their words, run a mile. For example, I remember many years ago before we met, I dated this guy very, very briefly, and he was always calling me and always telling me how great I was and how we were going to do this and how we were going to do that. But then when it came to the time to actually meet and go out on a date, he suddenly had an excuse. And it was very strange. And it took about 2 or 3 conversations for me to realize that this was just not going anywhere.
Just wasting your time.
Wasting my time. And then he would call me in the morning and he was talking to me and telling me how great I was. But then we never actually, I think we met up once. It was very strange. And then that was it. And then, can I just one more to this?
As many as you want, please.
I could go on forever with this. Another big one is something called love bombing. If you've ever heard this before. Love bombing is a technique often used again by people high in narcissistic tendencies to catch you and grab you like this. In the space of 2 weeks, again, I had this happen to me once before, they will make you feel like the most cherished, special, amazing person on earth. I remember another guy that I dated. I did do a lot of dating, to be fair, before we met, but still.
We all have our past.
Another guy that I dated, I remember at the very beginning, and the relationship lasted about 2 months, but at the very first week, he got me tickets to the theatre. And on the day that we were going to the theatre, I came out of my apartment and he was waiting there for me with a bunch of flowers. And it was just overwhelming at the beginning. And after 2 weeks, he completely lost interest in me. And this is what we call love bombing. It's not the same as genuine interest. It's this idea that if something seems too good to be true at the beginning, it probably is. And it goes hand in hand with charm. Now, a lot of people, for me, the word charm, if somebody says to me, he or she is so charming, it sets off a massive bell in my head, Because for me, this is just my own perspective. Charm is a bit of a cover-up. It's not genuineness. It's not a person who's really, really there. It's a cover for something. So those would be some of my red flags. And there are so many more. But again, think about what your own values are. What's important to you? What type of person do you truly want at the end of the day? Do you want somebody who's kind, somebody who's compassionate, somebody who's loving, somebody who's respectful? If that's the kind of person you're looking for, then you need to look for behaviors that align with those values, You don't have to go looking for the red flags, but you need to be aware of them, And if you see more green flags than red flags, then that's a great sign. So
talking about charm from a spiritual perspective, charm is perceived as well as a bad thing.
Absolutely.
Charm is a tool that it's used to get you to do something for me.
Absolutely.
So normally it's a tool to get you to do what I want you to do.
Absolutely.
And it's very used by politicians as well to charm you into voting them in. But spiritually, you hear these stories, of course, anecdotal about, for instance, the devil. The devil works better with charm than with power.
Absolutely.
He doesn't put his fork down and burns everything. No, he charms you into doing things. And it feels so good at the time. It's so tempting.
Yes.
And charm is dangerous in any perspective.
That's it. That's exactly.
From a spiritual perspective as well. Right. Charm isn't genuine.
Absolutely.
Charm is a tool.
That's it. I agree.
It doesn't come from within.
Yeah.
Well, and for people that are in relationships right now, what is one thing people can start doing today to improve their relationship?
I would say one thing you can do every day is wake up and ask yourself, what can I do today to make my partner's life better? Both partners should be doing this. What's something I can do today to improve my partner's life at this moment? And if that means asking them, ask. Ask them, sit them down and say to your partner, baby, honey, whatever, what do you need from me today? Is there something you need? Is there something I can do today that's going to make your life better? Something that simple, Of course, it's much better if it works on both sides.
You should also be able to ask your partner as well,
right?
Don't you think?
Absolutely, and asking them as well, asking for what you need, And And then you asked me for one, but let me give you
as many as you want to.
A second one, which I just read about this the other day, actually. I think this is really nice. When you and your partner, if you and your partner haven't seen each other all day, which doesn't really work for us because we work from home. But if, let's say your partner's been to work, you've been to work and you come home, the first 5 minutes that you are together, there should be absolutely nothing negative there whatsoever. Even if the bathroom's on fire. Yeah. It should be, hi honey, how was your day? How are you? I'm so glad to see you. So those first 5 minutes, everything's absolutely fantastic, positive, because that's going to set the tone for the rest of the day. Maybe the same thing in the morning for, at the weekend. After at minute 6, you can say, okay, by the way, we need to put out the fire in the bathroom. But those first 5 minutes should always be positive, with perhaps a physical, like something physical as well, a hug, a kiss. But it's really going to set the tone. If you come in from work and your first comment is, oh my God, what an awful day, it's just going to ruin the rest of the night. So those are my 2 things that if you start doing as of today in your relationship, they're going to have a huge impact.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Great.
And what are the things, or you mentioned already one of them, but what are the things that will destroy a relationship faster than anything else?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, there's a train of thought on this, that there are what we call the 4 horsemen of relationships. Spiritual, exactly. The first one is criticism. Yeah. Criticism will kill any relationship. Yeah. And this is not the same as offering feedback. There's a big difference between saying to your partner, honey, I would really appreciate if you could do this, or if you could not do this. Criticism is like, oh God, you always do this, using what we call absolutes. You always do this. You never do this. You never pick up your socks. You always leave the rubbish until it's overflowing. Yeah. Criticism is a big one. Yeah. The second one, and this is the biggest one, is contempt. And apparently a contempt in a relationship is the biggest predictor of divorce. Mm-hmm. And contempt is very similar to criticism, but it's like eye rolling, like, yeah, I can't believe you did that. You're so pathetic. It's name calling. It's belittling your partner, treating your partner like they are nothing. Yeah. And this is really important as well when you have conflict. This is something to bear in mind as well. Healthy conflict in a relationship is very, very important. Mm-hmm. You will always have conflict. Yeah. Ultimately, you've got 2 different people in a relationship with different needs, different perspectives, different ideas.
Who are feeling differently as well.
Absolutely. And who have different perspectives on the same situation, but for whom both perspectives are correct. And the ability to talk out the issue is a massive skill. It's something that has to be learned and practiced. It's something that I work with my clients, something that we put into practice a lot. You're going to have conflict with your partner, but if it gets to this point of name calling, belittling and contempt, this is a very bad sign. You cannot take it back. Even if you make up, your partner will still remember that time you called them that name. You never forget that. So this kind of actually links back nicely to what you were saying before about what's one thing you can do as well to improve your relationship. This would be my third thing, would be learn how to argue softly, gently, lovingly. Again, listening to what your partner needs. And if there's one thing you're going to do is you're going to cut out that contempt. Mm-hmm. No name calling, no nastiness. This is your partner. Yeah. So that is the big one, contempt. Okay. Then the third one is defensiveness. Again, we all become defensive. Yeah. It is unfortunately a normal human response. If a person tells you something, especially if they criticize you, this is why it's so important to be able to express to your partner your needs in a healthy and loving way. But when we're criticized, we often become defensive and we stop listening to what the other person has to say. So we have to learn to be open to feedback. We have to learn to listen to what our partner has to say. But of course, our partner also has to be able to say that in a healthy and respectful way. So it's all kind of tied up together. And then the fourth really big issue is what we call stonewalling, which is just switching off, completely switching off, purposely ignoring your partner. Yeah. as a way of punishing
as
them,
punishment,
as a punishment. Now, it's sometimes when we are having conflict, when we are, when our emotions and our stresses are high, we may need to take time apart for a bit. That's different. Stonewalling is if you don't, you might not speak to your partner for hours, days, even weeks. And just completely ignoring them. This is absolutely this is going to kill any relationship. This is not going to work in. So those are the four horsemen, with contempt being, which of the four horsemen is the worst in the biblical sense? Can't remember.
I don't know. They're all pest. Maybe death.
Death. Yeah, I suppose.
I think none of them are really good. None of them are good. Depends on your perspective.
That's true.
Say, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. But so contempt could be death, because it will be the death of your relationship. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. Again, it all boils down to spirituality as well, in the same respect that if you do that either as to yourself, because often you can apply those same horsemen to yourself as well.
Absolutely, for sure.
You can close yourself down and ignore yourself,
right?
Even though your body or your mind is screaming.
That's exactly right.
You can belittle yourself. You can. So spiritually, I would actually say they can also kill your spirituality if you do it to yourself.
Without a doubt.
Yeah. Another issue, or that is perceived as an issue, and I want your opinion on this, is age difference. More and more, we're living longer. More and more, our life expectancy keeps getting higher, which means age difference in relationships is going to become more of a thing.
Absolutely.
So is that a problem in a relationship?
This is an interesting one. Well, I mean, from a scientific perspective, studies show that relationships with a gap of more than 10 years will not work. Or they are less likely to work, shall we say.
Less likely, yeah.
I mean, anecdotally, there's always going to be a couple, I'm sure everybody knows a couple that do have a big age difference. But I think, if we're looking at 10 years, it's quite a long time, because you have to look at, again, at a biological perspective. We have to look at needs. Somebody who is 20 has completely different needs and wants to somebody who's 30, the same between 30 and 40. I think the older you get, the smaller that gap is. But again, I'm sure there are relationships out there that do work with. I don't actually know anyone myself with a big age gap. Do you?
I have a few clients.
Do you have? Yeah.
I mean, off the top of my head, I can think of 2 or 3 examples. I think, from what I can tell, they get along fine. I mean, from what I remember, they get along fine. I don't really see. I do have examples as well of clients who have been in relationships with much younger or older people that have failed.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I cannot really make put a connection between those. So I don't know. Honestly, I don't think it is such a problem. I mean, spiritually it shouldn't be, but I understand the biological aspect, the needs, etc.
Absolutely,
those are different.
Yeah, I guess it depends what a person needs. Again, if you've got somebody in their mid-40s dating somebody in their 20s. The idea, it could work. Theoretically, it could work. I don't see, it could, but then a person who's in their 20s maybe wants to be going out. You've got the question of children in there as well. Does a person who's in their mid-40s who already has kids want to have children? I mean, if you can reconcile these things, if there's a balance there, if they talk out these things and they want to be together, I say, why not? Go for it, to be honest.
On a different note, but at the same time linked to what we were speaking before, another big issue these days is multiculturalism. We live in a multicultural society. We ourselves are a multicultural couple. What advice would you give to someone who is starting to date someone else outside of their culture?
That's a great question. I think it depends firstly on the cultures that we're talking about. If you've got 2 very similar cultures, for example, ourselves, I'm British, you're Portuguese, we're talking about Western, Northern Europe, it's not a huge cultural difference. I think the issues come in when you're dating somebody that's from a very different parts of the world, where values might be different to what we have here. So, for example, you're dating somebody from India, from Africa. Problems might arise because beliefs, traditions might be very different to what you have. You might find that the person that you're dating, if you're a woman, you're dating a man who comes from a very misogynistic part of the world where women have a far more inferior role than men. And that's something you have to be really, really aware of. You have to go in with your eyes open. You need to research the culture. You need to decide, are you going to fit in with that particular type of culture? So I think from a value perspective, that's very important. Other things, whether they have different food, different music, again, these things are superficial things, but you have to really decide whether or not these two cultures can blend together. Of course, if you decide that they can, you have to think about practical things such as languages. Where are you going to live? Are you going to live in one person's country, another, in somewhere else? If you're going to have children, how are they going to be raised? Which culture is going to take dominance? Which language are they going to be taught? So I think these are things to take into consideration. Would you add anything else to that, my love? You can think of?
I think I would just add the religion part, especially from cultures from outside of Europe.
Absolutely.
Europe more and more a secular region.
Yes, absolutely.
And other parts of the world still very much religion-based, and some of them are actually theocratic states in some cases that people come from. Religion or spirituality is also a big thing there.
For sure.
It's also part of the culture, the expectation. It happens very frequently. I have some examples of clients whose relationship is dealt with, or the partner who comes from a more religious background or of a different culture wants the relationship to be guided by their faith.
Right.
And often in the multiculturalism, in the multicultural relationship, my experience with my clients is that first is the man, second is the priest or the whoever religious pastor, whatever, and then is the man's family,
right,
and then is the wife. And often there are some other people in between, but first is what the man wants. And often if the family believes the man is wrong, they take it to their pastor.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the pastor decides on what is best. So because the pastor decides, the hierarchy I find is man, pastor, family, his family normally, and then the wife. If there are, in my experience and from a religious perspective, a spiritual perspective, if there are kids and the kids are men, they will also be outranking the wife.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially if the kids are slightly older,
that's right.
Like if they're adults or young, old teenagers.
Right.
So I think that's what I would add is that religion,
absolutely,
in multiculturalism has also to be, and like you said, is the kid going to grow? Is going to be educated in one faith?
That's right.
In another faith or a secular?
So these are things, again, when you are entering into a relationship, you have to go in with your eyes open. You have to be aware of these things. Don't go blindly into it head first. You've got to really be aware of what you are getting yourself into, and you have to really ask yourself, is this something that I want?
And that I can do as well.
And that I can do, absolutely.
It may sound very exotic to say, I'm dating someone from a different continent.
Yes.
But with the practicality, or like you said, the practical aspects are very important.
Absolutely.
Well, and lastly, what was the biggest challenge you had to face? And did spirituality help you or hinder you in this process?
Okay, so for me, I would say the biggest challenge that I had to face was that, as you know, I grew up in a very dysfunctional, toxic household where there was a lot of verbal, emotional abuse from one parent, a lot of neglect from another parent. And I grew up just really with this very distorted, twisted perception of myself as a person who was just worthless, not good at anything. The thoughts that used to go through my mind was that I was stupid, ugly, fat, and just unlovable, basically. And it was a challenge for me to overcome. I had to work really, really hard on this. And I think absolutely spirituality definitely played a role. I've always felt that someone or something has been guiding me through life, although I cannot quite put my finger on who that is, should I say. But I've kind of felt, that my journey has brought me to where we are, to where I am now, to where we are now. And I think from a spiritual perspective, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be in life. And I had to overcome all of these issues to get to where I am now, for sure. So, I think, I could look at it from a very spiritual perspective. So,
well, I'm sorry that it happened to you, and but at the same time, it brought you here.
Exactly. That's it. So
the universe is playing a role here for sure, isn't it?
Yeah, without a doubt.
Lastly, if you don't mind, we'll end our interview with 3 quick questions.
Okay.
I ask the same questions to all my guests.
Yeah.
And I just ask you to answer quickly and according to whatever your intuition brings to mind.
Okay.
So, do you have any rituals, whether spiritual, energetic, emotional, that helps you cope with anxiety and stress that you won't let go of no matter what?
Definitely. Well, as you know, mine is cleaning. So when I'm anxious, when I'm stressed, I just love to clean. I absolutely love it. In fact, I remember when Russia invaded the Ukraine about 2.5 something years ago, I just went crazy cleaning. I had to make sure that everything was clean and tidy, and I had a therapy session with my own therapist. Therapists themselves, it's good practice for them to have their own therapy sessions every now and then. And I remember him saying to me, very sort of serious in a very deadpan voice, he said, "Yeah, that's it. When you're on the threshold of nuclear war, you've got to have a clean living room." Laughing my head off at that, but it's very therapeutic for me. It's a little bit like meditation almost, because I just let the thoughts run through my head. I just love it. And then, of course, you also have a nice house at the end of it. So
win-win situation.
Absolutely.
And was there something that you used to believe with all your heart and you don't believe in anymore?
Yeah, and this connects back to what I was just saying earlier about my childhood. I unfortunately grew up with this distorted belief that I was unlovable. 100% unlovable. I really thought that there was something inherently wrong with me that meant that I couldn't be loved. And after once I got into my adult years, I then had like a string of relationships that kind of reinforced this. And I actually remember having a breakup and kind of asking my then ex, what's wrong with me? Why am I not lovable? Because I really believed it to the core of my being that I just was not a lovable being, that compared to other people, there was something wrong with me. Then over, years of sort of self-reflection, therapy, I got to a point where, that turned around. And I think my turning point was, one of the many turning points, where I was living in Valencia in Spain, and I lived on the top floor of an apartment block, and outside there were rooftops with all these feral cats. They were scrappy, scrawny cats. They were always fighting and screaming. You would see fur flying around all the time. But I absolutely loved them, and I used to throw food to them. I would look after them as much as I could. And it just sort of clicked in my head one day. I thought, if I can love these cats that are just mangy and they've got patches of fur and scars everywhere, if they are lovable, then why am I not? And this was also around the time when I started my therapy as well. And with a lot of, like I say, with a lot of hard work, I relearned that. I learned that, of course, that's not true, that everybody, myself included, is worthy of love. Of course. Yeah.
Well, that's a great accomplishment, actually, isn't it? And lastly, do you want to recommend a book or a series or a channel on YouTube or whatever that our listeners may want to see or listen to?
Absolutely. So for relationship advice, there is an amazing website that I myself use quite frequently called the Gottman Institute, Gottman.com, which you'll reference, I guess,
I will put it on
okay.
the links.
It's in English, of course, but I'm sure you can, with AI, with whatever, you can translate it. And they have a ton of resources for helping romantic relationships, or all relationships, in fact. They have a lot of free resources, lots of free articles. They also run courses that you can do by yourself, with your partner. It's run by 2 doctors. It's very much grounded in scientific theory and practice as well. I've used it myself a lot. I think it's absolutely fantastic. So I recommend, if you're having relationship issues, if you want to learn about, just how to improve relationships overall, I highly recommend this website.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much, my love. Thank you for this fantastic interview. It was very enlightening. It's very rich. So thank you, Emma. If you like this episode at home, please like, share, subscribe, do the usual things. Share it with someone that you think may want to listen to what we spoke about here. And if you have any questions, just put them in the comments box and we'll try to reply as much as we can. Don't forget to subscribe as well to keep getting new episodes in the future. Thank you so much, my love.
Thank you.
Em português, obrigado à Emma por esta fantástica entrevista, foi muito produtiva. Obrigado a vós também por estarem desse lado. Eu quero também reconhecer a força da minha esposa. Ela fez uma cirurgia de urgência há uma semana. Há uma semana atrás estávamos no hospital a decidir fazer uma cirurgia de emergência para resolver um problema de saúde. E ela ainda assim, com uma semana de operada, quis estar aqui a dar esta entrevista hoje, quis partilhar convosco aquilo que ela sente que devia partilhar para vos ajudar, para ajudar quem precisa de orientação nas relações amorosas e nos relacionamentos interpessoais. É mais uma prova da muita força que esta mulher tem. Se gostaram deste episódio, digam algo nos comentários, partilhem, subscrevam o canal. Se tiverem dúvidas, perguntem também, vamos tentar responder. Este foi o último episódio da primeira temporada. Vamos voltar no outono com mais uma temporada dos Encontros Espirituais, mas até lá vão estando atentos às minhas redes sociais, que eu terei novidades muito em breve. Bem-ajam e muito obrigado. Thank you, my love.
Thank you.